He built a glass ceiling over her head and called it protection. Michael Thorne, the ruthless CEO of Vanguard Dynamics, spent 3 years telling the world that his wife, Isabella, was nothing more than a pretty decoration, a woman who knew more about lipstick shades than stock shares. He laughed at her silence. He mocked her in front of his mistress. He even signed the divorce papers on her birthday. But Michael forgot one crucial rule of power. Never underestimate the person who knows where the bodies are buried. He thought she was nothing. But when Isabella walked into the most critical board meeting of the decade, he didn't just lose his voice. He lost his empire. This is the story of the ultimate boardroom revenge. The penthouse apartment overlooking the Manhattan skyline was cold, despite the thermostat being set to a comfortable 72 degrees. It was a coldness that came from the silence, the kind of silence that suffocates. Isabella Thorne sat at the end of the long mahogany dining table. She was dressed in a simple, elegant cream blouse and slacks, her dark hair pulled back into a modest bun. She was beautiful, undeniable so, but in the way a painting in a museum is beautiful, meant to be looked at, not heard. At the other end of the table sat Michael Thorne. He was the picture of modern corporate aggression. Sharp jawline, sharper suit, and eyes that were constantly scanning his tablet, checking the Asian markets. He was the CEO of Vanguard Dynamics, a multi-billion-dollar defense and logistics contractor. He was a man who moved armies, both literal and metaphorical. "The coffee is cold," Michael said, not looking up from his screen. Isabella signaled to the housekeeper, Martha, who rushed forward to refill the cup. "I'm sorry, Michael. I was distracted." "Distracted by what?" Michael sneered, finally glancing at her. "Deciding which spa to visit today. Or is the decision between the platinum card and the black card too taxing for a Tuesday morning?" Isabella didn't flinch. She was used to this. For 5 years, since the death of her father, she had played this role. "Actually, I was reading the report on the merger with Kincaid Systems. The valuation seems off. Their logistics division is bleeding money in Southeast Asia. If you acquire them, Vanguard's stock could dip by 15% before the quarter ends." Michael froze. He slowly lowered his coffee cup, the china clinking loudly against the saucer. He looked at her with a mix of amusement and contempt. "You were reading the merger report," he repeated slowly, as if speaking to a child. "Yes, I saw it on your desk last night. Michael, the due diligence is incomplete. The environmental liabilities in their Jakarta plant alone are—" "Stop!" Michael barked, slamming his hand on the table. The sound echoed through the massive room. "Do not pretend to understand my business, Isabella. You have a degree in art history. You arrange flowers. You host galas. You look good on my arm. That is the extent of your job description." "I'm just trying to help, Michael. My father always said—" "Your father," Michael interrupted, his voice dripping with venom, "was a sentimental old fool who got lucky in the 90s. He built a company he couldn't handle. It took me to turn Vanguard into a global superpower. If he hadn't died and left you as the trustee, I wouldn't even have to deal with this conversation." He stood up, buttoning his jacket. "I have a meeting with the board of directors on Friday. The Kincaid merger happens then. Do not speak of this again. And for God's sake, buy a new dress for the gala tonight. You look like a librarian." Isabella watched him leave. She heard the elevator ding, followed by the silence returning to the penthouse. Martha, the housekeeper who had been with Isabella's family since she was a child, walked over and gently touched Isabella's shoulder. "He's a fool, Miss Isabella. A blind fool." Isabella took a sip of her tea. The submissive, fearful look she had worn for Michael vanished instantly. Her eyes sharpened, revealing an intellect that was cold, calculating, and terrifyingly precise. Let him think that, Martha, Isabella said, her voice steady. Arrogance is a blindfold, and Michael has been wearing it for a very long time. Isabella reached into her purse and pulled out a burner phone. She dialed a number. "It's me," she said. "He's proceeding with the Kincaid merger. He's ignoring the environmental reports. He's walking right into the trap. Initiate phase 2. Vanguard Dynamics was a fortress of glass and steel in the heart of the financial district. On the 50th floor, the atmosphere was electric with tension. The rumored merger with Kincaid Systems had the employees on edge. Layoffs were whispered about in the break rooms. Michael Thorne strode through the executive wing like a king. Flanking him was Jessica Prentice, the newly appointed vice president of operations. Jessica was everything Isabella wasn't: loud, aggressive, and openly ambitious. She was also, as the entire office knew, sleeping with the boss. "The board is jittery, Michael," Jessica said, matching his stride. She wore a crimson suit that screamed for attention. "Old man Hamilton is asking questions about the debt structuring. He thinks we're leveraging too much." "Hamilton is a dinosaur," Michael dismissed. "He's been on the board since my father-in-law's days. He's too scared to make the big moves. Once the merger goes through, I'll force a vote and have him retired." "And the wife?" Jessica asked, a smirk playing on her lips. "Is she going to be a problem? She still holds the proxy for the Founders' Trust, doesn't she?" Michael laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Isabella? Please. She signs whatever paper I put in front of her. I told her the proxy renewal was an insurance form for her jewelry. She didn't even read it. She's nothing, Jessica. A void. I could replace her with a mannequin, and no one would notice the difference." They entered the conference room. Several junior executives were already seated, looking nervous. "Listen up," Michael announced, throwing his jacket over a chair. "The Kincaid deal is the future of this company. I don't care what the analysts say about the debt. We are buying that logistics network. If anyone has a problem with that, you can clear out your desk right now." The room was silent. No one dared to challenge Michael Thorne. "Good," Michael said. He turned to Jessica. "Show them the projections." As Jessica began her presentation, projecting charts that conveniently glossed over the massive liabilities Kincaid carried, Michael's phone buzzed. It was a text from Isabella. "Good luck today. Please be careful with the Kincaid deal." Michael rolled his eyes and showed the screen to Jessica. She suppressed a giggle. "She's so quaint," Jessica whispered. "Does she think she's part of the team?" "She thinks she's helpful," Michael whispered back. "It's pathetic, really. I'm going to serve her the divorce papers next week, right after the merger closes. I won't need the Founders' Trust proxy once the stock price doubles. I'll have enough capital to buy out her shares and kick her to the curb." "And then?" Jessica asked, her hand brushing his knee under the table. "And then," Michael smiled, "Vanguard will finally be mine. Completely. No more ghost of her father. No more nagging wife. Just us." At that moment, the door to the conference room opened. It wasn't a scheduled interruption. Standing there was Arthur Hamilton, the senior-most board member. He was 80 years old, walked with a cane, and usually only appeared for the quarterly votes. "Arthur," Michael said, his voice tight. "We're in the middle of a strategy session." "I am aware," Arthur said, his voice raspy but firm. "I am here to inform you that an emergency board meeting has been called for Friday morning, 9 a.m. sharp." "Emergency meeting?" Michael stood up. "On what grounds? I call the meetings, Arthur. I am the chairman." "Under the bylaws of the company," Arthur said, reciting from memory, "if 3 senior stakeholders call for a review of executive conduct, a meeting is mandatory. We have received disturbing information regarding the Kincaid merger." Michael glared at the old man. "Disturbing information? From who? Some jealous competitor?" From a shareholder, Arthur said cryptically. Someone who seems to know the financials better than you do, Michael. Arthur turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and the shareholder has requested that all non-executive staff be excused from the Friday meeting. That includes Ms. Prentice. Jessica bristled. I am the VP of Operations. You are an interim VP, Arthur corrected, and your appointment was never ratified by the Governance Committee. Friday, 9 a.m. The door clicked shut. Michael kicked his chair, sending it spinning across the room. Who is it? Who is leaking to the board? Jessica looked pale. Do you think it's Julian Blackwood? He's been trying to buy Kincaid for months. It has to be. Michael paced the room. He's trying to spook the board. He's trying to kill the deal so he can swoop in. He grabbed his phone and dialed his lawyer. Get the papers ready. We're accelerating the timeline. I want the merger signed by Thursday night. We'll present it to the board on Friday as a done deal. They can't stop what's already signed. He looked out the window, down at the tiny people on the street. He felt invincible. He had no idea that the leak wasn't coming from a rival CEO. It was coming from the iPad Isabella was currently using to play solitaire in the living room, while simultaneously routing encrypted financial audits to Arthur Hamilton's private server. That evening, the annual Vanguard Gala was held at the Pierre Hotel. It was a spectacle of wealth and power. Senators, tech moguls, and defense contractors mingled under crystal chandeliers. Isabella wore a stunning emerald green gown that hugged her figure, a stark departure from her usual muted colors. She looked radiant, dangerous. Michael, however, barely looked at her. He was working the room, shaking hands, selling the Kincaid merger to anyone who would listen. Jessica was there too, ostensibly as an employee, but she hovered near Michael with possessive intent. Isabella! A voice boomed. Isabella turned to see Julian Blackwood, the CEO of Blackwood Systems, Vanguard's biggest rival. He was a tall, imposing man with silver hair and a reputation for ruthlessness that rivaled Michael's. Mr. Blackwood, Isabella smiled politely. A surprise to see you here. I wouldn't miss it, Julian said, taking her hand. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. I received the package, the analysis on the Kincaid Jakarta plant. Brilliant work. The soil toxicity reports alone are enough to bankrupt Vanguard if Michael signs that deal. I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Blackwood, Isabella said, her face a mask of innocent confusion. I just arranged the flowers. Julian chuckled softly. Of course. My mistake. But tell me, Mrs. Thorne, when the dust settles and Michael is buried under the rubble of his own ego, what happens to Vanguard? Vanguard was my father's legacy, Isabella said, her eyes suddenly hard as diamonds. It will require new leadership. Leadership that understands loyalty. I see. Julian nodded. Well, if you ever decide to stop arranging flowers and start arranging hostile takeovers, give me a call. Across the room, Michael spotted them. He stormed over, grabbing Isabella's arm a little too roughly. What was that? Michael hissed. Why were you talking to Blackwood? He was just complimenting the centerpieces, Michael, Isabella said, flinching slightly for effect. Stay away from him. He's the enemy. And stop drinking. He snatched a glass of sparkling water from her hand. You look flushed. You're embarrassing me. He turned his back on her to greet a senator. Isabella stood alone in the middle of the crowded ballroom. She felt the eyes of Jessica Prentice boring into her from the bar. Jessica raised her martini glass in a mocking toast. I have your husband, the look said. I have your company. You have nothing. Isabella returned the gaze. She didn't smile. She simply checked her watch. It was 9 p.m. At that exact moment, across the city, A courier was delivering a sealed envelope to the home of every single board member of Vanguard Dynamics. Inside the envelope was not just the data on the toxic Kincaid merger, but a second dossier. This dossier contained chat logs, emails, bank transfers. It detailed how Michael Thorne had been siphoning company funds to pay for a luxury condo for Jessica Prentice. It detailed how he had bribed safety inspectors at Vanguard's Ohio plant. It was a roadmap of corruption, and it was signed, simply, the daughter. "Go ahead, Michael," Isabella whispered to the back of her husband's head. "Enjoy your party. It's your wake." Thursday passed in a blur of frantic activity for Michael. He forced the legal team to work 20 hours straight. He bullied the CEO of Kincaid into signing the preliminary agreement at 2 a.m. on Friday morning. He slept for 3 hours in his office, waking up on Friday at 6 a.m. He felt gritty, exhausted, but triumphant. He had the signature. The merger was locked. He went home to change for the 9 a.m. emergency board meeting. When he entered the penthouse, it was quiet. Too quiet. "Isabella," he called out. No answer. He walked into the bedroom. The closets were open. Her clothes were there. Her jewelry was on the vanity. It didn't look like she had left. He walked into the kitchen. Martha was there, polishing silver. "Where is my wife?" Michael asked. Martha didn't look up. "She left early, Mr. Thorne. She said she had business to attend to." "Business? What business?" Michael scoffed. "Did the nail salon open at 7 a.m.? "I believe she said she had a meeting," Martha said, finally looking at him. There was a glint in her eye that Michael had never seen before. A look of pity. "A very important meeting." Michael ignored her and grabbed an apple. "If she calls, tell her I'll be late tonight. We're celebrating the merger." He left the apartment, his mind already rehearsing his speech to the board. He would walk in, throw the signed Kincaid contract on the table, and tell Arthur Hamilton to retire. It was going to be glorious. He arrived at Vanguard Dynamics at 8:45 a.m. The atmosphere was strange. The receptionist didn't greet him. The security guard looked at the floor. "What is wrong with everyone today?" Michael muttered to himself. He took the private elevator to the 50th floor. The doors opened, and he walked down the long corridor to the boardroom. Jessica was waiting outside the heavy oak doors. She looked terrified. "Michael," she whispered, grabbing his arm. "They're all in there, all of them. Even the retired members, and the lawyers, and the auditors." "Good." Michael straightened his tie. "More witnesses to my victory." "No, Michael, you don't understand." Jessica's voice shook. "They wouldn't let me in. Security barred me. They said I'm under investigation for embezzlement." Michael froze. "What? That's ridiculous. Who said that?" "Mr. Hamilton. And someone else. There's someone else in there. Michael. Sitting at the head of the table." "Blackwood?" Michael's face went red. "Did Julian Blackwood break into my boardroom?" I don't know. I couldn't see." Michael brushed her aside. "Pull yourself together, Jessica. I'll handle this." He grabbed the brass handles of the double doors and threw them open. "All right," Michael boomed, stepping into the room. "Who the hell called this meeting, and why is my VP locked out in the hallway?" The room fell dead silent. Every seat at the long oval table was filled. 12 board members, 3 corporate lawyers, 2 external auditors. And at the head of the table, the seat reserved for the chairman and majority shareholder, sat a figure with their back to the door. The high-backed leather chair obscured their face. "I asked a question," Michael snarled, walking toward the head of the table. "Get out of my chair." Arthur Hamilton, sitting to the right of the chair, stood up. He didn't look frail today. He looked furious. "Sit down, Michael," Arthur said. "Excuse me?" Michael laughed incredulously. I am the CEO. I am the chairman. You don't tell me to sit down. You are suspended, pending an investigation, Arthur said. Sit down. Michael slammed his hand on the table. This is a coup. I have the Kincaid contract right here. I saved this company. You bankrupt this company, Arthur shouted back, losing his composure. We've seen the files, Michael. We've seen the bribes. We've seen the toxicity reports you hid. We know everything. You know nothing, Michael yelled. Who fed you these lies? Blackwood? Who is in that chair? He lunged for the chair and spun it around. I said, who the hell are... The chair spun. Michael stopped. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Isabella sat there. She wasn't wearing the beige, modest clothes of the housewife. She was wearing a sharp, navy blue Armani power suit. Her hair was loose, cascading over her shoulders. She wore reading glasses perched on her nose, and she was calmly reviewing a stack of documents with a red pen. She looked up, over the rim of her glasses. Her eyes were cold, amused, and utterly terrifying. Hello, Michael, she said. Her voice was different, deeper, commanding. You're late. Michael stared at his wife. For a moment, his brain simply refused to process the image. The Isabella he knew, the woman who asked him which tie matched his suit, the woman who spent her days organizing charity luncheons for stray dogs, did not sit in leather chairs at the head of billion-dollar tables. She did not wear power suits, and she certainly did not look at him with that expression of bored superiority. Is this a joke? Michael finally sputtered, looking around the room at the solemn faces of the board members. He let out a nervous, incredulous laugh. Arthur, is this your idea of a prank? Putting my wife in the chair? It's bring your spouse to work day. Sit down, Michael, Isabella said again. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. Her voice had the cool, crisp timbre of a judge reading a death sentence. We have a lot to get through, and your theatrics are eating into my time. Your time? Michael stepped forward, his face reddening. This is my company. You think because your father founded it, you have the right to play dress-up. Get out of that chair before I have security drag you out. Isabella sighed, closing the file folder in front of her. She took off her glasses and set them down gently. Correction, she said. My father founded it. You were hired to run it. And as of 8:30 this morning, the Founders Trust, which holds 51% of the voting shares, has executed a vote of no confidence in the CEO. You signed the proxy over to me, Michael shouted. 5 years ago. I control the trust. Did you? Isabella raised an eyebrow. Or did you just sign a document I put in front of you 2 weeks ago, thinking it was an insurance rider for my diamond necklace? Michael froze. The memory flashed in his mind. A busy morning. Coffee spilling. Isabella nagging him about insuring her mother's vintage sapphire necklace. He had grabbed the pen, scrawled his signature on the bottom of the stack of papers without reading them, just to get her to shut up. You, Michael whispered, the blood draining from his face. You tricked me. I didn't trick you, Michael. I relied on your arrogance. You think I'm stupid, so you didn't bother to read what you were signing. That document was a revocation of your power of attorney and a reinstatement of my full voting rights as the trustee. She turned to the board. Gentlemen, let's discuss the Kincaid merger. Michael claims this deal is the future of Vanguard. He claims the debt is manageable. She pressed a button on the console, and the massive screen behind her lit up. It wasn't the glossy presentation Jessica had prepared. It was a raw, ugly spreadsheet filled with red ink. This, Isabella said, standing up and walking to the screen, using a laser pointer, is the real balance sheet of Kincaid Systems. Michael told you their logistics division was profitable. In reality, they have lost contracts with 3 major shipping lines in the last 6 months. They are hemorrhaging cash. That's a lie, Michael yelled. Those are fabricated numbers. These numbers, Arthur Hamilton interjected, his voice grave, were verified by the forensic accountants Isabella hired 3 months ago. Independent auditors, Michael, not the ones you keep on your payroll. Isabella continued, her voice relentless. But the financial losses are just the tip of the iceberg. Let's talk about the Jakarta plant. Michael, did you know that Kincaid has been dumping chemical waste into the local water supply for 5 years? Did you know there is a class action lawsuit pending in international court that could cost Vanguard $4 billion in liability if we acquire them? The room gasped. The board members began whispering furiously to one another. Michael stammered. That was never in the due diligence report. Because you didn't read the due diligence report, Michael, Isabella said, walking back to him. She stood toe-to-toe with him. She was wearing heels, making her almost his height. You were too busy planning your victory lap. You were too busy buying condos for your mistress. You were too busy treating your wife like a piece of furniture. She leaned in close, so only he could hear. You called me nothing, Michael. You said I was a void. Well, look into the void now. It's about to swallow you whole. Michael sank into the chair Arthur had vacated. He felt dizzy. The walls of the boardroom seemed to be closing in on him. How? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. How do you know all this? You arrange flowers. Isabella sat back down at the head of the table, reclaiming her throne. She looked at him with a mixture of pity and disgust. You really didn't know me at all, did you? She said softly. When we met, I was 23. I had just finished my master's in art history. That part was true. But did you never wonder why my father, a man who built an empire from scrap metal, adored me so much? Did you think he just liked my smile? She gestured to the screen, which changed to show a diploma. Isabella Marie Thorne, MBA, Wharton School of Business, summa cum laude. I finished my MBA under my mother's maiden name 2 years into our marriage, Isabella revealed. Online and night classes. While you were out at business dinners that lasted until 3 a.m., I was studying corporate law. While you were playing golf on weekends, I was analyzing market trends. But why? Michael asked, looking broken. Why hide it? Because I wanted to trust you, Isabella said, and for a second her mask slipped, revealing genuine pain. I loved you, Michael, in the beginning. I wanted you to be the great man you pretended to be. My father warned me. He said you were ambitious but hollow. He said you lacked a moral compass. I defended you. I told him you just needed a chance. She looked down at her hands. So, I stepped back. I played the role of the supportive, silent wife. I let you shine. I thought if I made myself small, it would give you room to grow. Her eyes hardened again. But you didn't grow. You just swelled. You became arrogant, cruel and reckless. And then came Jessica. Isabella, that meant nothing, Michael pleaded, desperate now. She was the final straw, Isabella cut him off. I could handle your ego. I could handle your neglect. But when you brought her into my house, when you let her mock me at my own dinner table last Christmas, when you started siphoning money from the company, money my father worked his life for, to buy her silence. Isabella slammed the file on the table. That was when I stopped being your wife and started being the majority shareholder. I spent the last year building this case, every email you sent, every illegal transfer, every bribe. I have it all. Arthur Hamilton spoke up. Isabella came to me 6 months ago, Michael. She showed me the initial findings. I didn't want to believe it. I've known you for years, but the evidence was undeniable. She saved us, Michael. If we had signed that Kincaid deal today, Vanguard would be bankrupt within 2 years. We have already alerted the SEC, one of the lawyers added, not making eye contact with Michael. And the district attorney. Michael looked up, his eyes wide with terror. The DA? For what? A few bad business decisions? For fraud, Michael, Isabella said coldly. Embezzlement, corporate espionage, and bribery. You paid off the safety inspectors at the Ohio plant. We found the wire transfers. That's a federal crime. You're not just losing your job today. You're likely going to prison. The heavy doors opened again. This time, it wasn't a dignified entrance. 2 security guards walked in, escorting Jessica Prentice. She wasn't in handcuffs yet, but she looked like she wished she were anywhere else. Her mascara was smudged, and her usual arrogant posture was gone, replaced by trembling fear. "Michael!" she cried out when she saw him slumped in the chair. Tell them I just did what you told me to do." Isabella swiveled her chair to face Jessica. "Ah, Ms. Prentice. So glad you could join us." "Mrs. Thorne," Jessica stammered, trying to regain some composure. I don't know what you think is going on, but I am a professional. I have rights." "You have the right to remain silent," Isabella said dryly, "but I doubt you have the capacity for it." Isabella picked up a separate, thinner file. Jessica Prentice, hired 3 years ago as an administrative assistant, promoted to VP of Operations in record time, bypassing 5 senior candidates with actual engineering degrees. Salary tripled in 18 months, and owner of a luxury condominium in Tribeca, purchased by a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands. Isabella tossed a photo onto the table. It was a picture of the condo deed. "The shell company is called Invictus Holdings," Isabella said, "which, coincidentally, is solely funded by Vanguard's consulting fees budget. Michael was stealing from the company to pay for your lifestyle." Jessica turned on Michael instantly. The loyalty of a mistress paid in stolen gold is notoriously fragile. "He made me take it!" Jessica shrieked, pointing a manicured finger at Michael. "He said it was a bonus. He said it was standard procedure. I didn't know it was illegal." "You signed the invoices, Jessica," Michael snarled, his self-preservation instinct kicking in. "You knew exactly where the money came from. You helped me cook the books on the logistics reports." "Because you threatened to fire me if I didn't," Jessica yelled back. The board members watched the spectacle with grim satisfaction. It was a circular firing squad. "Enough!" Isabella commanded. Her voice sliced through their shouting match. "Jessica, you are terminated immediately for gross misconduct and complicity in corporate fraud. Security will escort you to your desk to collect your personal items, and only your personal items. Your laptop and phone are company property and are now evidence." Jessica looked at Michael, expecting him to save her. He didn't even look at her. He was staring at the table, defeated. You can't do this," Jessica sobbed, her voice weak. I have nothing." "You have exactly what you earned," Isabella said. "And frankly, you should be grateful I'm only firing you. If you cooperate with the FBI investigation against Michael, you might avoid jail time. But that's up to you." Jessica gasped. She looked at Isabella, realizing for the first time the magnitude of the woman she had mocked. She nodded frantically, tears streaming down her face. "I'll talk," Jessica whispered. "I'll tell them everything." "Get her out of here," Isabella signaled the guards. As Jessica was dragged out, weeping, the room fell silent again. Now it was just Michael. Isabella stood up. She walked around the table until she was standing right behind him. She placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture that used to be affectionate, but now felt heavy, like the hand of a cop making an arrest. "The board has voted, Michael," she said. "You are removed as CEO, effective immediately. You are stripped of your stock options. You are banned from the premises." Michael looked up at her. His eyes were red. "Isabella, please. The company. It's my life. It's all I have." "No, Michael," Isabella said, leaning down to whisper in his ear, her voice devoid of warmth. "It was my life. You were just a guest, and you overstayed your welcome." She straightened up and looked at the security chief waiting by the door. "Escort Mr. Thorne out of the building," she ordered. "And take his access badge. He doesn't work here anymore." Michael stood up shakily. He looked at the board members, men he had bullied, ignored, and underestimated. None of them offered a hand. Arthur Hamilton simply turned his gaze out the window. Michael looked at Isabella one last time. He wanted to scream, to hit something, to assert his dominance. But standing there, in her father's boardroom, she looked 10 feet tall. He felt small. He felt like nothing. He turned and walked out the door, the silence of the room chasing him down the hallway. Isabella watched the doors close. She let out a long breath, her shoulders dropping just an inch. "Arthur," she said, turning to the old man, "we have a lot of work to do to clean up this mess. Call the PR team. We need a statement." "What should we tell the press?" Arthur asked, smiling for the first time in years. "That the CEO resigned for personal reasons?" Isabella smiled, a genuine, dangerous smile. "No," she said. "Tell them that Vanguard Dynamics is under new management. Tell them the daughter has returned." The walk from the elevators to the front doors of the Vanguard building was the longest of Michael Thorne's life. Usually, he walked this hallway with a phalanx of assistants and security guards, barking orders into a headset. Today, he walked alone. The receptionist, a young woman named Sarah, whom he had never bothered to learn the name of in 3 years, watched him pass. She didn't smile. She didn't nod. She simply picked up her phone and typed a message. As Michael pushed through the revolving doors and stepped out onto the humid Wall Street sidewalk, the flashbulbs blinded him. Isabella hadn't just called the board. She had leaked the outcome before the meeting even ended. A swarm of reporters was waiting. "Mr. Thorne, is it true you've been removed for embezzlement?" "Michael, what about the rumors of an affair with your VP? Mr. Thorne, are you facing jail time?" Microphones were shoved in his face. He tried to push through them, looking for his black town car. It was always waiting at the curb. Always. But the curb was empty. He pulled out his phone to call his driver, Thomas. "I'm sorry. The number you have dialed is no longer in service." Michael cursed and looked at his phone screen. A notification from the company server. "Device remote wipe initiated." "No, no, no!" he shouted, tapping the screen frantically. Before his eyes, his emails, his contacts, his calendar, his entire digital life vanished. The screen went black, then rebooted to factory settings. He didn't even have the number for a taxi service saved anymore. "Mr. Thorne," a reporter from the Financial Times shouted, "is it true your wife is the one who uncovered the fraud?" Michael glared at the camera. "My wife is a housewife. She doesn't know a balance sheet from a grocery list. This is a misunderstanding. I will be vindicated." He shoved a cameraman aside and hailed a yellow cab, diving into the back seat to escape the humiliation. "Where to?" the driver asked, chewing gum. "The St. Regis," Michael snapped. He needed a drink. He needed to regroup. He needed to call his personal lawyer, not the company clowns. At the hotel bar, he ordered a double scotch. He downed it in one gulp and ordered another. He reached for his wallet and pulled out his sleek, black American Express Centurion card. The black card. "Keep the tab open," he told the bartender. 10 minutes later, the bartender returned, looking awkward. "Sir?" The card was declined. "Don't be stupid," Michael slurred. "That card has no limit. Run it again." "I did, sir. Twice. It says account frozen, stolen or lost report filed." Michael felt the blood drain from his face. Isabella. She was the secondary holder on the account. She must have called Amex the moment the vote passed. "Try this one." He threw a Visa on the counter. "Declined." "This one." A MasterCard. "Declined, sir." Every asset he had was tied to joint accounts or company perks. He checked his wallet for cash. He had $40. I have to go," Michael muttered. He threw a 20 on the bar and stumbled out. He couldn't go home. The penthouse was in her name, technically in the trust's name. If she had changed the locks, he wouldn't get past the doorman. He pulled out his wiped phone and manually dialed the one number he knew by heart. Senator Collins. They played golf every Sunday. Michael had donated $50,000 to his campaign last month. "Hello?" the senator answered. "Bill, it's Michael. I'm in a bit of a jam. I need—" "Michael!" The senator's voice was icy. "I saw the news. I can't talk to you. The ethics committee is already sniffing around my donations because of your indictment rumors. Do not call this number again." Click. Michael stood on the street corner, the realization crashing down on him like a tidal wave. He wasn't powerful. He wasn't respected. He was just a man with a checkbook. And without the checkbook, he was nobody. 3 days later, Michael sat in the sterile grey office of a criminal defense attorney named Saul Berkowitz. He wasn't a high-end corporate lawyer. Those firms had all conflicted him out, citing their relationships with Vanguard. Saul was a strip mall lawyer who specialized in keeping drug dealers out of prison. It was all Michael could afford with the cash he had pawned his Rolex for. "It's not looking good, Mr. Thorne," Saul said, chewing on a pen. "The DOJ isn't just coming after you. They're making a career out of you. They have the wire transfers, they have the emails, and they have a star witness." "Jessica," Michael spat. "That traitor." "She's cut a deal," Saul confirmed. "Full immunity in exchange for testimony. She's painting you as the mastermind. She claims you coerced her, threatened her job if she didn't set up the shell companies. She's lying. She came to me with the idea." "Doesn't matter," Saul shrugged. "She got to the feds first. But that's not your biggest problem. Your biggest problem is the civil suit from Vanguard." Saul slid a document across the desk. It was thick. The header read, "Vanguard Dynamics and the estate of Silas Thorne, Versor." Michael Thorne. "Isabella," Michael whispered. "She's suing you for breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, and, this is the kicker, intentional infliction of emotional distress," Saul said. "She's not just trying to recoup the money, Michael. She's systematically dismantling your entire life. She's invoking the morality clause in your prenup." "The prenup?" Michael laughed bitterly. "I signed that 10 years ago. I didn't think she even kept a copy. She did. And it says that in the event of infidelity proven to damage the company's reputation, you forfeit your claim to any marital assets. The condo, the cars, the retirement accounts. It all reverts to her." Michael put his head in his hands. "So I'm destitute? Worse. You're in debt. She's seeking legal fees too." Michael stood up, pacing the small room. "I need to talk to her. If I can just talk to her. She loved me once. She's doing this because she's hurt. If I can just apologize, maybe she'll call off the dogs." "I wouldn't do that," Saul warned. "There's a restraining order pending." Michael ignored him. He stormed out of the office. He had to see her. He had to remind her of who he was, who they were. He took the subway to the Vanguard building. It was a humiliating experience. squeezed between strangers who read newspapers with his face on the front page. He arrived at the lobby. The security guard, an older man named Henry, whom Michael had fired twice for looking tired, only for HR to save him, stepped in front of the turnstiles. "I need to see my wife, Henry," Michael demanded, trying to summon his old authority. "You don't have a wife here, Mr. Thorne," Henry said, his face stone cold. "You have an appointment with the pavement if you don't leave. Call her. Tell her I'm here." Henry picked up the phone. He spoke quietly, then nodded. "She says she'll see you," Henry said, surprised. "Top floor." Michael felt a surge of hope. "She still cares," he thought. "She just wants me to beg." He rode the elevator up. He smoothed his rumpled suit. He practiced his apologetic face, the one that worked when he forgot anniversaries. The doors opened. The office had changed. His modern minimalist art was gone. In its place were classic oil paintings, her father's collection. The sterile chrome desk was replaced by a warm oak executive table. Isabella sat behind it. She looked busy. She didn't look up as he entered. "Isabella?" Michael started, his voice cracking. "Bella." She finished signing a document, capped her pen and looked at him. Her gaze wasn't angry. It was indifferent. It was the look one gives to a stain on the carpet. "You have 2 minutes, Michael," she said. "I have a meeting with the Japanese delegation at 2. "Is that all I am to you? A calendar appointment?" Michael pleaded, walking closer. "Bella, I'm sorry. I screwed up. I know I hurt you. But you can't destroy me like this. We were partners." "We were never partners," Isabella said calmly. "I was your prop, and you were my mistake." "I can fix this," Michael insisted. "The Kincaid deal. I can help you salvage it. I know the players. You need me, Bella. The wolves on Wall Street will eat you alive. You're too soft for this." Isabella laughed. It was a dry, sharp sound. "Soft?" she asked. She pressed a button on her desk. The door opened and Julian Blackwood walked in, the rival CEO, the man Michael hated most in the world. "Hello, Michael." Julian smiled. He walked over and shook Isabella's hand. "Isabella, the revised terms for the joint venture are excellent. My board is thrilled. Dumping the Jakarta plant was a stroke of genius." Michael stared, slack-jawed. You're working with Blackwood?" "I'm not acquiring Kincaid," Isabella explained to Michael, as if he were a slow student. "I'm partnering with Blackwood Systems to build our own logistics network. It costs half as much and carries zero liability. Julian and I closed the deal this morning." "But he's the enemy," Michael sputtered. "No, Michael," Isabella said. "He's a businessman. You were the enemy. You were the one poisoning the company from the inside." She stood up. "Your 2 minutes are up." "Bella, please." Michael dropped to his knees. "I have nothing. No money. No home. I'm facing 10 years in prison. Don't let me go to jail, please. Just drop the testimony. Say you made a mistake." Isabella looked down at him. There was a moment of silence. For a second, Michael thought he saw a flicker of the old Isabella, the gentle woman who nursed him when he had the flu. "I can't do that, Michael," she said softly. "Why?" He wept. "Because," she leaned in, her voice hard as steel, "I believe in consequences. You spent 10 years ignoring them. Now they've all arrived at once." She looked at Julian. "Would you mind showing Mr. Thorne out? Security is waiting." Julian smirked. "With pleasure." 1 year later, the federal prison in upstate New York was a bleak place, especially in November. The wind howled through the chain-link fences, rattling the razor wire. In the visitation room, Michael Thorne sat in an orange jumpsuit. He had lost weight. His hair, once perfectly coiffed and dyed, was grey and thinning. He looked 20 years older. He sat on the plastic chair, waiting. He didn't get many visitors. Saul Berkowitz had stopped coming once the money ran out. Jessica was living in Montana under a new name, part of a plea deal. The door opened. Michael looked up, expecting his public defender with more bad news about his appeal. It wasn't a lawyer. It was Martha, the housekeeper. She carried a small paper bag. She sat down across from him behind the glass partition. She picked up the phone. Michael picked up his receiver. "Martha." "Hello, Mr. Thorne," she said. Her voice was neither kind nor cruel, just factual. "Why? Why are you here?" Michael asked. "Did she send you?" "No," Martha said. "Miss Isabella is in London. She's receiving the Global CEO of the Year award tonight. She doesn't have time for this." Michael winced. CEO of the Year, of course. "She turned the company around," Martha said, a hint of pride in her voice. "Stock is up 200%. She started a scholarship fund for the children of the employees. People are happy, Michael. They respect her." "I built that company," Michael muttered, though the fire was gone from his voice. "You built a house of cards," Martha corrected. "She built a fortress." Martha reached into her bag and held up a small object against the glass. It was a watch, a Patek Philippe. Michael's eyes widened. "My watch, the one she gave me for our 5th anniversary. Found it in the back of a drawer when we were clearing out the penthouse," Martha said. "Miss Isabella told me to pawn it or throw it away. She said she didn't want any remnants of you in the house." "So why are you showing it to me?" "Because I wanted you to know," Martha said. "I pawned it. I got $12,000 for it." "And?" Michael asked, confused. "You kept the money?" "No," Martha smiled. "I donated it to the Domestic Violence Survivors Legal Fund. In your name." Michael stared at her. The irony was so thick it choked him. "Why, Martha? Why come here just to kick me when I'm down?" "Because," Martha said, standing up, "for 5 years I watched you treat that girl like she was invisible. I watched you make her feel small so you could feel big. I just wanted to see you small, Mr. Thorne. Just once." She hung up the phone. "Martha, wait!" Michael shouted, banging on the glass. "Does she ever ask about me? Does she ever mention my name?" Martha paused at the door. She didn't pick up the phone again. She just mouthed one word through the glass. "No." She walked out. 5 years later, the gala for the Vanguard Foundation was the event of the season. The ballroom at the plaza was filled with dignitaries, artists, and titans of industry. Isabella stood at the podium. She was 40 now, and more beautiful than she had ever been. There was a grace to her, a power that felt effortless. She wore a simple black gown and the sapphire necklace her mother had left her, the one Michael had refused to insure. "Thank you all for coming," Isabella said into the microphone. Her voice commanded the room. "Tonight, we are raising money for education in developing nations. Because talent is universal, but opportunity is not. We must never underestimate those who have not yet been given a voice." Thunderous applause filled the room. In the back of the room, hiding in the shadows near the catering entrance, was a man in a waiter's uniform. He was balding, with deep lines etched into his face. He was carrying a tray of empty champagne flutes. It was Michael, released early for good behavior and overcrowding, but unemployable in any corporate sector. He worked for a temp agency now. Catering, cleaning, whatever he could get. He watched Isabella on the stage. She was radiant. She was laughing at something the French ambassador said. She looked free. A guest, a young tech billionaire, bumped into Michael, spilling a drop of wine. "Watch it, pal," the billionaire snapped. Look where you're going. Michael lowered his head. I'm sorry, sir. My fault. God, good help is hard to find, the man muttered, turning back to watch Isabella. Isn't she amazing? Isabella Thorne. They say she saved that company from total ruin. Her husband was some idiot who ran it into the ground. Yeah, Michael whispered, gripping the tray so hard his knuckles turned white. Some idiot. She's a legend, the man continued, not looking at Michael. She proved that you don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to be right. On stage, Isabella raised a glass. To the future, she toasted, and to the lessons of the past. May we learn from them, but never live in them. The room cheered. Michael watched her take a sip. For a fleeting second, her eyes scanned the room. They swept over the crowd, over the diamonds and the tuxedos, and for the briefest microsecond, they seemed to land on the shadows in the back. She didn't pause. She didn't frown. She simply looked past him, as if he wasn't there, as if he were part of the wallpaper. She had moved on. He was the ghost now. Michael turned around and pushed through the kitchen doors, back into the noise of dishwashers and shouting chefs, back into the invisible world he had once forced her to inhabit. And that is the story of how Isabella Thorne turned the tables on the man who tried to erase her. It's a powerful reminder that silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's just a strategy. Michael thought he was the king of the world, but he forgot that a king is nothing without his kingdom, and he lost his the moment he underestimated his queen. What did you think of Isabella's revenge? Did Michael deserve his fate? Or was Martha's visit to the prison too harsh? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of corporate karma, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching, and remember, be careful who you step on today, because they might be the one signing your paycheck tomorrow. See you in the next video.